on, everybody, and welcome back to the Thursday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show, sponsored by Bet365. I am your host, Josh Harris. Joining me in some Canucks gear, could be some foreshadowing for tonight, my partner in crime, Slim Cliffy. How we doing on this Thursday afternoon?
Doing pretty good. Yeah, this is my Bo Horvat jersey. I always have bad luck with jerseys. Like, I was in Montreal like 10 years ago. I bought a Mike Camilleri jersey. He got traded like a year later. I bought a Yaroslav Halak St. Louis jersey. He was there for a couple years, I think, before going to the Islanders. Got Horvat, traded 2 years later. Just like, I remember getting a Josh Donaldson Jays jersey, and he was gone a year later. Like, I don't know. Like, I just got to start buying like 3 or 4 jerseys of rookies and just keep whichever one actually lasts past 3 years with his own team or something like that, I guess. But no, doing well. Pretty excited for this 12-gamer tonight. Maybe not excited. Nervous, I guess. You and I were talking about, all the offensive stars that are on this slate can sometimes make single entry a little tough, especially when you got 24 teams playing. But we're going to do our best to break them all down.
Yeah, Cliffy looking a little bit like Ragnar Lothbrok there with the fresh cut. Gonna go.
I mean, you missed it in the summer. I had this in like a Viking braid in the summer, and I wore it to a wedding actually, and nobody really said anything about it. They're just like, well, there goes Cliffy with his weird hair. It's like, okay,
yeah. I'm if I could do it, I would. I can't. I also ordered a Breece Hall jersey, so I'm going to replace the old Winter Classic Callahan. I see our boy Quick Party in the chat. I'm thinking about getting a black Stützle jersey. I'm between Stützle, Sanderson, and Brady Tkachuk. I think maybe if he has some insight on that, maybe he'll probably tell me to get Zub. But like, I'm kind of worried he's not going to be on the team.
Yeah, but I'm not too sure how many defensemen are going to be there. Beyond for 2 more years beyond Shabbat and Sanderson. We'll see.
I might just go Stützle just to be safe. I can always get the nameplate changed. Sanderson is the hipster one. I don't know how hippy-dippy I am, but we'll see. I do like their black jerseys. It's one of the cleanest looking jerseys in the NHL. Huge 12-gamer, like we mentioned. Lots of firepower on the slate. There's one really chalky spot. We'll get into that in a second. But I see all of you here. Smash that like button. Make sure to subscribe. If you do that, you can keep up with all of our shows, DFS offers, giveaways, and much more. Once you subscribe, hit that notification to get alerts when our shows go live. I have the notification button on to get alerts when our shows go live, so I know when the shows are. Otherwise, it could be a mess. If YouTube isn't for you, you can find all of our content over on the Stochastic Podcast channel. Leave us a like, leave us a 5-star review. Also, we have the Hall of Fame. You can get into the Hall of Fame by changing your avatar at stochastic.com/avatar, placing the top 3 of a contest with over 5K contestants, which is actually possible this year in NHL. Thank you, DraftKings, for now. Tweet the wins to @StochasticHOF on X or email us with your screenshot, and you can win a free month of Stochastic package of your choice. Probably should choose NHL if you're doing that on this show, but, beggars can't be choosers. If you want to do another sport, I won't cry. Timmy Stu, the answer, yeah, I'll get a Timmy Stu black jersey and hang it up in the background here. It's a lot sharper than this white Callahan Winter Classic jersey. But let's get into this slate here. First game of the night, Calgary with a 3.4 total. Heading into Buffalo, the Sabres have a 3.2 total. You'll notice we'll say a lot of these lines don't have ownership. There's only one line projected in double digits right now. There's a couple close. So basically, if you're playing single entry, you're going to have to choose between playing that really chalky line or playing a bunch of lines that really aren't garnering a ton of ownership. Now, I will say I went on a rant in the Discord last night about ownership not really mattering unless you're 150 maxing. So, like, if you want to play the chalk, just go for it. There are so many ways you can get different. The best advice I can give you if you're one entry 3 max about the chalk, just play your guys. There are so many ways to get different. Don't fade a line that you think is going to be the best on the night because they're coming in overowned. Anyway, I just wanted to get that out there. Looking like there's going to be no ownership on the Sabres tonight. Like, their top 2 lines are combined 0.7%. the ownership here is on Calgary. Like they're super cheap. The third line, Backlund, Coronado, Coleman, 12-3, coming in 5x their top 2 stack percentage. If anything in this game on the Calgary side, going to the top line, they're double their top 2 stack, 4.4% ownership. Not going to really hurt you on this slate. Buffalo 1 is the problem I have here. They're 0.6 projected, and they're pretty expensive. They're like Dallas 1 is 22-1, Colorado 1 is 22-1, Edmonton 1 is 24. The Leafs are up there. Buffalo's 21-9. They've burned a lot of people, but I feel like this is a spot where you can get ahead of the field to get ahead of their big performance, because it's coming. It's coming. It just hasn't happened yet. Whoa.
Yeah. They definitely let us down in the last game, but the line scored 1 goal. Tage Thompson was over 20 minutes. He had 5 shots. Like, you can kind of feel it coming with them. Whether it's tonight, I don't know. Like, it's not a great matchup going into that Calgary top line, but it's not a brutal one. Like, Mangiapane and Huberdeau typically have had pretty good offensive numbers together, and I think that makes sense because they're the 2 best offensive wingers that team has. But the defensive numbers aren't very good. In 140 minutes together, 3.6 expected goals against, or 3.6 actual goals against per 60 minutes, 3.2 expected goals against. So those are pretty bad defensive numbers. And, early portion of the season, 3 games or whatever, Calgary's penalty kills, giving up the most shots per minute of any team in the league. That certainly wasn't the case last year. Calgary had a pretty good penalty kill last year. Wasn't really that much turnover. So I don't know why, even a small sample, why it would look so bad, but they're not going to keep up 80 shots against per 60 minutes on the penalty kill, but maybe they are a bottom 10 penalty kill team for whatever reason this season. And, that Buffalo power play is usually pretty good. One of the problems with Buffalo, though, is they don't really draw a lot of penalties. They're at the bottom of the league list this year. They weren't very high last year. They're in the bottom 10, I'm pretty sure. So it's one of those things where, like, if this was like a $19,000 line at 4% ownership, I think I might even be more inclined to play them rather than, almost 22 grand. Because at that point, like, yeah, Colorado's obviously going to be chalky. But on a slate this large, you can get so unique with your secondary stacks, or even with the Colorado stack, turn into a power play, something like that. Like, I'm not really worried if Nathan McKinnon's 20% owned or 25% owned and Mikko Rantanen is 15%. Like, that doesn't really concern me. So I do like Buffalo 1 again here tonight. There are a lot of expensive lines here you're going to have to pick from: Buffalo, Dallas, Toronto, Colorado. You could probably make an expensive Boston power play stack if you wanted. So there are decisions that are going to have to be made. I don't think it's as bad of a matchup as it looks on first glance for that Buffalo top line. So they're at least going to be in consideration for me in my single entry. For the depth, it's kind of funny that it's the Middlestat, Benson, Greenway line has basically turned into that team second line. There's been games where Middlestat's been at or near the top of the ice time list amongst their forwards. He's been playing pretty well. Buffalo's Calgary's middle 6 is probably going to be better defensively. That's one of the things that's keeping me off of them. So I think it's Buff 1 or bust for me. The Calgary side's a lot more interesting because, as you mentioned, there's not a lot of ownership on them. Lindholm, Huberdeau, Mangiapane coming in under 5% in the top 2 stacks by ownership. Backlund, Coronado, Coleman, 5%. Like, they're coming in over-owned. I don't think you need to full stack them. Like, I think that's something where you can leave Coleman off, move Coronado into a top power play stack for Calgary. Like, Buffalo does not look good defensively, especially their second and third lines. Second line, especially, I should say, the Dylan Cousins line has been pretty dreadful. So I think it's some sort of Calgary power play stack that I would lean towards. Huberdeau, Lindholm. If you want to leave Mangiapane there, fine. If you don't, move down to Matt Coronado, do something like that. I think it's Calgary power play, Buffalo 1 for me in this game. I think Calgary 3 is perfectly fine. I just think they're coming in a little bit over-owned, and there are other cheap filler lines that we'll talk about later I'd rather go to.
Yeah, I agree. Let's move on to the next one. just banger after banger games here tonight. Toronto Maple Leafs with a 3.6 total heading into Florida, the venue where their season ended. Oh no, it ended on their ice, which is even better. But the Panthers have a 3.3 total. None of these lines are coming in over 9%. Toronto won 9%. Matthews, Marner, Bertuzzi. Florida running back Kachuk for Hagee, Oosterainen, Barkov, Reinhart, Rodriguez. Like that line in a very small sample has ridiculously good numbers together. You mentioned before the show, you're not surprised Barkov and Evan Rodriguez have good numbers. Evan Rodriguez generally has good numbers wherever he goes. When Pittsburgh moved him up to the top line a few seasons ago, that was their best numbers of the season. And then he's bouncing around the league for whatever reason. I do really like the Florida lines here tonight. The Leafs are a mess on the blue line. They're a mess in the bottom six. They're a mess in goal. I wish they're a little bit lower owned, but again, like it's nothing egregious. And both their lines are 17-3. Now the Barkov line's probably going to get the Matthews matchup, which leaves Kachuk to go out against, Tavares, Nylander, and Knies, which was probably their best line in the playoffs. But I don't know. Like I have interest in both top sixes here.
Yeah, it's funny. I kind of slagged the Barkov-Reinhart duo on the last show, and then Reinhart went out and scored 2 goals. I mean, that happens a lot here on the strategy show. Like, if you hear us really dig into a player, maybe go throw like a buck on them to be an anytime goal scorer that night or something. But the flip side of that is that Reinhart and Barkov are typically very good defensively. I was looking at their defensive numbers, like 2.2 expected goals against going back to last season. Barkov and Reinhart on the top line. That's really, really good. What's let them down is the goaltending. Florida goaltending is pretty much, other than the first 3 rounds of the 2023 playoffs, Florida goaltending's been letting them down for 5 years now. So not really that big of a surprise. So that would be kind of the reason to go towards the Matthews line. I mean, not only that, the Matthews line has just been unreal to start the season. 3.2 expected goals for, 3.1 actual goals for, some 6-on-5 and power play goals for Matthews is really what's helping. But it's the ice time more than anything, right? Matthews and Marner are averaging 23 minutes of ice. I think Matthews was over 25 minutes in his last game. Like you rarely, you'll see Connor McDavid get there. You'll see Barkov maybe get there once in a while. It's not even a half dozen forwards that you'll see play that much ever. And, Nathan McKinnon, but that's kind of the reason to play Toronto is like the Florida goaltending is nothing to be worried about. Florida's taking, quite a bit of penalties, top 5 by time shorthanded last year. They're extremely high again this year. They'll take a lot of penalties. The Toronto power play is typically pretty good. Like, I don't mind going to Toronto 1. They're coming with only 9%. It's, they're coming with positive leverage by the top stacks tool. In fact, I'll bring up the very top of our top stacks tool because it's all the top teams and top players anyway. You can see right there's Connor McDavid, Draisaitl, Kane. We'll get to them. Colorado, Dallas, Toronto. Like, it's all the big lines that have all the positive leverage here today. So I don't mind Toronto 1. Tyler Bertuzzi's only playing 16 minutes. That's a little bit of a concern. And William Nylander has just been shooting a ton. And he's been shooting a ton going back to last year. Like, it's like his last 50 games or something like that. He's at, I think it's a 3.8 shots per game, which is just obscene for a guy that's effectively a second-line winger. So, if you want to leave off Bertuzzi and put in Nylander, especially where Florida takes so many penalties, I think that's certainly one route to go. It's more expensive. You're going to have to get kind of, funky with the rest of your lineup, but I have no problem with it at all. The Toronto second line is kind of interesting. You're right. I thought it was their best line in the playoffs last year. I think they call him nines now. I'm not sure. Anyway,
but he was with O'Reilly for a good part of the playoffs.
That was part of it. I think O'Reilly helped them look pretty good. They are generating quite a bit in a small sample. The thing is I think I'd rather play Florida 2 than Toronto 2. I did write up Matt Kachuk for the picks article. Free to read over on Stokastic.com. Just head to the NHL section. Matthew Kachuk has 4 assists in 3 games, 5.3 shots per game to start the year. As we mentioned on the last show, him and Carter Verhaeghe are nails together. 4.3 goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5. Like, that's absurd. That's almost 2 full goals above the league average. I think the league average is like 2.51. So it's like, it's really, really high. And what I mentioned in that article is Toronto struggled defensively without that top line on the ice. You mentioned it on the last show too. Basically, since they traded Pierre Engvall, it's not just the bottom 6; it's the second line as well. Calle Yarncroc, when he's there, can help. Other than that, John Tavares is at the point of his career where he's a goal scorer, and that's about it. Goal scorer, playmaker, and that's about it. Nylander's fine, but he's not super elite defensively. He's not like Marner. And Nyes is not an elite defensive player. Like, it's a pretty good matchup for Florida too. I kind of like Florida too here in this game. They're coming in, 70% ownership. That's perfectly fine. If you want to take out Luostarinen and put in Barkov to try to make it a power play stack, I think that's okay. But, I think you kind of want to keep Luostarinen in for the salary savings. So I think my favorite line in this entire game is Florida 2, Tkachuk, Verhaeghe, Luostarinen, especially where Toronto typically doesn't take a ton of penalties anyway. This is more about the 5-on-5 matchup for me. So I think Toronto 1 certainly in play. They'll be in consideration for me, but I think Florida 2 is my favorite line in this game.
Yeah, I agree. I like Florida 1 too. It's just like they're going to get a tougher matchup. And on the Toronto side, it's definitely Toronto 1, just because 1, Florida's goaltending is a mess. 2, they're super high event. They're still missing their 2 best defensemen. They take a ton of penalties, so they're not coming in super high owned. I think Toronto 1's definitely in play here. Let's move on to the next one here. The Nashville Predators with a 2.6 total heading into New York. The Rangers have a 3.4 total. It's kind of weird. We saw Edmonton power play absolutely throttle the Predators the other night. Rangers top line with Mika Zibanejad and Chris Carter, who are both on the top power play. Rangers have one of the best power plays in the league. They're coming in under 1%. They're the same price as Florida 2, as Florida 1, coming in with a tenth of the ownership in a very, very good power play matchup. Maybe I'm a homer take, and I'll get your take on it, but I really like Rangers 1 here. You want to go to Rangers 2. They're finally not super chalk. They're 14-1. I still think they look really good, but for me, on the Rangers side, I want pieces of that power play for sure. On the Nashville side, is really just not much. It's the answer there. If in your MME mix, I probably have a tiny bit of Nashville 1. It's just not a good matchup. Like, the Rangers have honestly looked very, very good to start the season. Igor in net he's in net, which is weird that they didn't give Quick this game, but Igor is in net tonight. Top line coming in at 0.1% for Nashville. Just 2 of 150 will take you over the field like immensely, and I think that's about it.
Yeah, I agree. Also, they said they're scratching Philip Tomasino, so our Nashville 3 line is officially dead. Evangelista did get more ice time in the last game, but the Rangers have been off to a pretty good start. Like, a lot of their underlying metrics are at or near the top of the league. They haven't played the best of the best, Buffalo, Columbus, Arizona, so take that with a grain of salt. But there were times where the Rangers didn't look that good against the worst teams last year. So the fact that they're actually, pounding the piss out of the bad teams like they should be is a good sign, I think. I agree with you. The Rangers top line is probably the line to go if for ownership concerns. Like you said, they're coming in at about the same price as Florida 2, less ownership, under 1% over on DraftKings. They're running into the same problems that they've always run into, and that's finishing at 5-on-5, right? They're generating a lot, 3.2 expected goals per 60 minutes in the early portions of the season, only 1.8 actual goals. Like, they have to figure out a way to convert those shots into goals. I have no idea what it's going to be under Laviolette. That's up to them to figure out. I think I would probably just power play stack the Rangers, as you said. Nashville, typically not a great penalty kill team, like one of those teams that relies on their goaltending. Like, if UC Saros doesn't have a good game on the PK, the team's probably not going to have a good game on the PK. The Rangers power plays certainly look very, very good in the early portions of the season, Chris Kreider especially. So, if you want to do like Kreider, Zibanejad, Panarin, that's perfectly fine. Do the double center with Zibanejad, Trocheck, and add Kreider, or something like that. I think that's kind of the way that I would want to go. If I want to stack an even strength line, it would be the second line, Panarin, Hito, Lafreniere. It's just to save a little bit of money so that I can actually go out and stack them with like a Toronto 1 or something like that, because you can fit that in. So if I were to even strength and stack anything from the Rangers, it would be the second line. Like they're still, they're still torching opponents. They've dominated every single game that they play. Like Lafreniere and Panarin look like they've really found some chemistry together, which is certainly helpful. Like you mentioned, not a lot of ownership, coming in under 4% in the projections. I just think if I were to go to the Rangers side tonight, it's some sort of power play stack. Take those 4 guys, make your stack with it. Add Adam Fox if you want, leave him off. It's up to you. But it's mainly the power play 4s. I want to take advantage of what's probably going to be a pretty bad Nashville penalty kill.
Yeah. And I know we always talk about like how Vancouver, and we're going to get to them next, how Vancouver is super reliant on the power play. Rangers feel like they're super reliant on the power play, although they've kind of come to play a little bit 5-on-5 the past few years. 3 years ago, they were dead last in 5-on-5 and just super relied on the power play. But I think, this is a very good power play matchup. So you take it when you can get it. Vancouver Canucks with a 3.1 total heading into Tampa Bay. The Lightning somehow have a 3.5 total. Steven Stamkos is back tonight. Tampa going Nikita Kucherov with Braden Point and Alex Barry-Boulet. Is he still your guy?
No.
Steven Stamkos, Hagel, and Cirelli. Vancouver running back their lines. Tampa 3 with Nick Paul, who's on the top power play with Tanner Jeannot and Waltteri Morella. Your boy Essamont got demoted. But I kind of want to get your take here because I don't have much faith in the Tampa Bay Lightning defensively here. I would assume the Cirelli line is going to go out against Kuzmenko and Pettersson, which would leave the JT Miller-Besser line out against Kucherov and Point. Not that either of those really concern me. I kind of like Vancouver here. Like, I kind of would just power play stack Vancouver here if you want to. Like, their goalie situation's a mess. They haven't been great defensively. You talked about it on the last show. Like, maybe they're just not good anymore. You know what I mean? On the flip side, I don't know, man. Like, they're decent offensively. I guess I go to that second line. I don't really know what I want to do there. Like, I probably just end up power play stacking both sides here if I was playing MME.
Yeah. On the Tampa side, like, you asked me about Barry-Boulet. Like, he was a guy that typically had like excellent scoring numbers in the AHL, and those types of guys, sometimes they pan out. Like, look at Jonathan Marchessault, right? Sometimes they don't. That's kind of the other thing, right? Like, sometimes players can generate a lot in the AHL, but just never translate it to the NHL.
Already has a nice list of 7 guys that he likes.
Like Marty Ferk is. Yeah. Sorry to bring up bad memories, but Marty Ferk is certainly one of them. Tampa has had pretty bad defensive issues this season. Like, it's not, certainly the goaltending has been a letdown for them. Losing Andrei Vasilevsky, having to rely on Jonas Johansson night in and night out. But they're giving up more shot attempts per 60 minutes of 5-on-5 than Vancouver, Nashville, Detroit, Buffalo. Like, those are not teams you want to be giving up more shots than. So it's not just on the goalie. I'm wondering if maybe they're trying to press offensively, thinking that they have to score like 5 goals a game to have a chance to win, rather than try to lock things down defensively. But, I mentioned in the Picks article, I think it was 2 days ago, Tampa Bay's defensive struggles, that top line, go back to last season, basically, back to the All-Star break, basically, and you're getting to about a half season's worth of data showing bottom third of the league defensive metrics, and that's a real problem for them. The thing is like Vancouver's not playing particularly well. Like, they're getting pretty hot is what's happening. I think like 3/4 of their forwards have an on-ice shooting percentage of at least 15% of 5-on-5, which is that's like obscene. I was just checking right before the show, and no forward has a save percentage behind them lower than 935. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're just riding percentages pretty hard right now. that's going to fall apart eventually. Whether it's tonight or not, we'll see. But Tampa's not coming in with much ownership. The top line is coming in under 5% owned. If you're going to tell me like Braden Point, Nikita Kucherov, and whoever's on the third line tonight, it's Barry Boulette, is coming in under 5% owned on any size slate, I would have a lot of interest. So, like, I have no problem going to the Vancouver side here. I think I would probably rather play Tampa in this one. They're still getting a lot of minutes. Kucherov has been shooting the puck a fair bit. You know, if you want to take off Barry Boulette and put on Nick Paul or Stamkos, or just, you know, go with a two-man forward stack, I think that's fine, because I'm not convinced Barry Boulette's going to last the entire game there. Like, he might be gone by midway through the second period. Like, Brandon Hagel jumps back up, or Nick Paul moves up, or something like that. So I think it's the power play guys I would focus on most on the Tampa Bay side. Kucherov, Point, especially. You want to dip down to the second line, I think it's fine. I'm going to get off the Vancouver train for tonight. And tonight we are going to be riding the Lightning.
Oh, that was good. Wow. I don't even know how to follow up with that. So I'm not. I'm just going to continue. If you are thinking about going premium, you probably should. Here are 160 of you. A couple of you have got to be thinking about going premium. If you click the link in the description box below, you get access to the best NHL data and tools in the industry. What do you get? You get players and ownership projections. You get the top stacks tools. You get the line combinations. And you also get access to the Discord, which is invaluable, in my opinion. These shows are always going to be free. Cliffy's articles will be free, but everything else I just mentioned is going to be premium. So make sure to click that link in the description below. It will take you where you need to go, and you can sign up for the weekly or monthly. Let's move on to Edmonton with a 3.8 total, heading into the city of misery. Philadelphia with a 2.9 total. I don't even know how to talk about Philadelphia. I'll let you talk about them. Just that stat you gave me before the show is kind of just silly. We're coming off a game where Leon Draisaitl went absolutely nuts. That top line is 24,000 the full stack. Connor McDavid, Draisaitl, Kane. They're not coming in with too much ownership here, less than the Leafs. I really like the Edmonton top line here. If you want to leave off Kane, Adam Hyman, or Nugent Hopkins to make it a power play stack, probably advisable. Like, if you want to leave on Kane, it'll get you a little bit more different, but he's been awful to start the season. On the Flyer side, I'll let you talk about it. It's just impossible to stack them. I think, like, Couturiers look pretty decent to start the season. Travis Konechny's look good. It's just they don't play with each other.
Yeah. What I told Josh before the show was Philly's up to almost 137 minutes of even strength ice time as a team so far this season. In that time, the only line that has played more than 14 minutes together, and 14 minutes of even strength time is basically one game for a top line. Like, you'll see that from like Florida or something like that. The only line to play more than 14 minutes together is their fourth line. Like, they're just moving everybody around the lineup at all times. Like, even Couturier and Atkinson, I think it's only like half of Atkinson's ice time has been next to Couturier, right? Like, that's kind of the problem with stacking the Flyers. Like, it's not a bad matchup, and the Flyers are actually playing kind of well. The other thing is how badly they're spreading out their ice time. Like, I wrote up Sean Couturier in the picks article today for the main reason that he's a lot cheaper on FanDuel than he is on DK, which is one of those pricing discrepancies you can take advantage of. The other is that he's been over 20 minutes in all three Flyers games. Other than that, there's no Flyers player within 3 minutes of him, but they have something like 9 forwards, all between like 14 and 17 minutes. So it's basically like Couturier's playing like 20 to 21 minutes. I think Atkinson's at around like 17 to 18. And then basically everybody else, except for their worst forward, is between like 13 and 17 minutes. Like, they're just moving everybody around, and they're spreading out the ice time a lot. So I don't actually hate the Flyers here tonight, which feels pretty bad to say. 2.9 total is not exactly what you want to see, but like, I'm not worried about any matchup on the Edmonton side, like for any reason whatsoever. Like Edmonton's top line, 3.4 expected goals against per 60 minutes as it's presently constituted. Like they do score a ton. Don't get me wrong. That's why they put them together. But when you're trying to create offense all the time, it leaves you kind of exposed, defensively, and that's what happens. So if you want a two-man Couturier and Atkinson, I think you can do that because they do play the power play together. Throw Travis Sanheim on the blue line. Other than that, I don't know if I can full stack anything from the Flyers. It would just be picking one-offs, like a one-off. I hate this. I was going to say a one-off Noah Cates, but I don't even think I'm that sick in the head today. Like a one-off Owen Tippett, one-off Joel Farabee, something like that. Other than if you're going to play like Atkinson and Couturier together. On the Edmonton side, like it's just play the power play guys. You know what I mean? Like we talked about it on the last show. Like I even said it on the last show. If you want to play Edmonton 2, play Edmonton 2 and then add one of McDavid or Draisaitl. Like Edmonton 2 by itself is not going to have a GPP winning score on a slate with 24 teams. Edmonton 2 plus Draisaitl or Edmonton 2 plus McDavid, something like that. I think that's kind of what you should do. I have no problem trying to take advantage of Philly here. Like Philly's been taking quite a bit of a decent amount of penalties to start the season. So I think you can kind of take advantage of the fact that they are taking so many, like not a ton, but they're at 4 per game, which is about the middle of the league. So it is the Edmonton power play guys, but I'm going to be honest. I think it would be Couturier and Atkinson that's kind of drawing my interest here the most. It's just if I'm going to pay up and get super expensive, like I would probably just kind of choke the ownership on like a Toronto or a Colorado or something like that. For Edmonton, it's just play the power play guys if you want to. If you don't want to, just move along. Like there's just nothing else to say about this team.
Yeah, agreed. Let's move on to the next one here. Our Los Angeles Kings with a 3.0 total heading into Minnesota. The Mild also have a 3 total here. Looks like Minnesota's giving Marc-Andre Fleury another start. Like, I don't know how they haven't figured out that Gustafsson is their better goalie. It's been year and a half. Like, just play the guy. He's better. Kings going Kempe, Kopitar, Byfield, Fiala, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Alex Lafreniere. I'm probably saying that wrong. But GPP winning line, Trevor Moore, Deneau, Arthur Kaliev, 10,700 tonight. Kaliev looked at home on that line. It'll be interesting to see what happens when Victor Arvidsson comes back. But that doesn't matter tonight. Are the Minnesota Wild still going 11-6?
No, they called up a guy named Sammy Walker. He's going to be playing with Eric Sinek and Marcus Johansson.
I actually don't mind Sammy Walker, to be honest. He probably shouldn't be in the top 6 of the NHL team right now, but he's not one of those guys who completely looks out of place. That being said, my favorite lines in this game are probably on the Kings side. You want to go to the top line in Minnesota, go ahead. They just haven't been great since the middle of last season. Kaprizov always in play. But for me, I'm looking on the LA side. They're cheap. They are getting a little bit more ownership compared to their top 2 stack. But, no Spurgeon, no Goligoski. Minnesota's looking a little broken.
Yeah, Minnesota did bust out in that last game for 5 goals. But I will mention it was against Montreal, a bottom 5 defensive team. And every goal was at power play or shorthanded. So they didn't score a single even strength goal against Montreal, which is kind of surprising when you see that they put up 5. And I think it speaks to the struggles that Minnesota is actually having. They're not, the top line's not playing that well. The top line's at 55 shot attempts generated per 60 minutes to start this year. They've only played 30 some minutes together, but that's not very good. You know what I mean? Especially when you can factor in that they just played a game against Montreal and they were at home against Florida, one of the higher paced teams in the league. That line's just not, I don't know if you can blame it on that line. Their defense is pretty injured, but they just haven't really looked that good. Like you said, I think Kaprizov one off is certainly always in play. I don't think I can get to a point where I can full stack. If you want to leave Ryan Hartman and just go Kaprizov, Zuccarello, I think that's one way to go. Maybe you can take advantage of of a Los Angeles penalty kill that, certainly hasn't been elite in the NHL over the last couple seasons, but hasn't been terrible. I think this game is about Los Angeles again. It's kind of a tough matchup going into Minnesota. The funny thing is, I was like, this matchup seems familiar. And then I look back at last year, and this was the exact matchup in Minnesota. That was a 7-6 game. I remember watching that game very vividly. I'm pretty sure it was like the weekend right when the NHL started. It was like the second game of the season. So
I remember that. It was a weekend.
Yeah, it was a Saturday night.
Yeah.
I remember it just being a wild game. That was pun intended, by the way. The second line for the Kings is probably what's drawing my attention here. They usually do send out Eriksson as a shutdown line. He'll probably go up against Kopitar and Kempe. That'll leave Fiala, Dubois, Laferriere as free to go up against what should be softer matchups against Minnesota. Fiala and Dubois both on the top power play unit. The Minnesota penalty kill was decent last year. It hasn't really been all that great so far to start this season. Just outside the bottom 10 by shot attempts allowed per minute on the penalty kill, worse than teams like Columbus and Detroit. Like, definitely not where you want to be. Los Angeles looked really good in that game. It was the third line that did all the damage, but I will say, like, Fiala and Dubois look like they're finally starting to generate a little bit of chemistry together. I think they're a little bit overowned on DraftKings, but it's one of those lines where I think he can leave all three guys. Like, Laferriere has 12 shots in 3 games. That's kind of insane for a guy that basically just stepped into the lineup because of an injury. I think it's Los Angeles too, that Fiala, Dubois, Laferriere line that I like best in this game.
Yep. And this is, if you want to go narrative street, like Bobby Boom going crazy in chat right now. I see he's been hanging out with Evgeny Kuznetsov this week, but it is Fiala revenge. But again, with Fiala, he has 19 teams he can have revenge against. I'm sure Pierre-Luc Dubois has something against Minnesota. He has something against everybody in the league. Let's move on to the next one. Arizona Coyotes with a 3 total heading into St. Louis. The Blues also have a 3 total. Pavel Buchnevich is out, and instead of moving up Jakub Vrana onto the top line, they have moved Brandon Saad up there. It's going to be Kyrou Thomas Saad, Shen, Kasperi Kapanen, Alexei Torpachenko, Jakub Vrana, Kevin Hayes, Sammy Blais. That lineup is atrocious. Our Arizona Coyotes, Clayton Keller, Barrett Hayton, Nick Schmaltz. Second highest owned line projected on the slate at 9.8%. Very good matchup. Not my favorite line in this game, though. Jason Zucker, Logan Cooley, Matthias Miskelly, 12-3. They are a bit over-owned per the top 2 stacks. But Cooley has looked excellent to start the season. He's on the top power play. Matthias Miskelly, absolutely snubbed for the Calder voting. And Jason Zucker is just a solid player. I think, for ownership purposes, if you don't want to, go chalky Arizona 1, which I think is fine, by the way, you can definitely play them. They're a very, very good line. But that Cooley, Miskelly, Zucker line is calling my name.
Yeah. I should say, Michelli's just he's a playmaker. He's definitely not a goal scorer. That's kind of the one thing. He's like Robert Thomas on the other side of this game, honestly, is he'll rack up assists, but he won't rack up shots and goals. That's kind of the one thing that worries me a little bit. I'm kind of interested in the Arizona top line in this game. The reason for that is they usually do use Thomas and Kyrou in kind of a shutdown role. And if you look at the numbers of that top line over the last couple of years, whenever Pavel Buchnevich has either been injured or on a different line, they are bad. Yeah. We're looking at 3.4 expected goals against per 60 minutes, 4 goals against per 60 minutes at 5-on-5 in a sample of over 450 minutes. Brandon Saad, he's just not at the point of it. I wrote him up in the picks article because it's still a good offensive line. It's a good spot for him, but he's not at this point of his career. He's not the 2-way winger he was 5-6 years ago. He's not going to help that line defensively. I think it's a pretty good matchup for Arizona 1. The one thing that kind of sucked, well, two things suck. One, you're coming in with about 10% ownership on DraftKings per the top stacks tool. That's a little high for me for a team on the road in a 12-game slate, especially a non-elite team. The other is St. Louis doesn't take a lot of penalties. I think they were 30th by penalties taken last year. They're only giving up 2.5 power plays per game in the small sample this year. So you're not going to get a lot of power play time from Arizona, but like, let's face it, Arizona power play hasn't been good for a while. So anytime you're playing Arizona, it's not like, oh wow, this awesome power plays in a smash spot, because they never are. You're always playing them for the 5-on-5 matchup. And I do like this 5-on-5 matchup for that Arizona top line. So they're one of those lines, like if you're not going to play super expensive Dallas or Buffalo or Edmonton or whatever, like if you're going, more with those mid-range stacks, like, like a Florida, Los Angeles, or a Minnesota, Vancouver, something like that. I think this Arizona top line is one of those lines that you can mix in with them. I'm not as high on Arizona 2 as you. Like, I know Logan Cooley has looked really good, but he's not been shooting the puck very much. And if he's not shooting the puck and Michelli's not shooting the puck, it's like somebody's got to shoot the puck, and I'm worried who's going to shoot the puck. That's so like, I'm sorry, man. I'm not on board with that. Like, I'm excited to watch them play together. I'm excited to watch them to see, like, maybe Cooley will shoot more with Michelli on his wing. But it's Arizona 1 for me in this game. I think St. Louis 1 is perfectly fine as well, especially where Saad provides like such a cheap drop off from Pavel Buchnevich, and or Arizona does take quite a few penalties, right? But I'm going to be honest, I think it's Vrana, Hayes, and Sammy Blaze that I like best from the St. Louis side as a 3-man even strength line. It feels insane to say that, but they actually do have good numbers together this year. Generated 15 shot attempts in 15 minutes together. They're all on the second power play unit. And St. Louis is a team that does like a 60-40 power play split. Like, if Arizona takes 4 penalties here tonight, that St. Louis second power play unit's going to get like 3 minutes of ice time or something like that. So I swear to God, I think my favorite line on the St. Louis side is Jakob Vrana, Kevin Hayes, Sammy Blaze. But my favorite line easily in this game is the Arizona top line.
Yeah, the opening night, I think it was opening night. Whatever the Blues' first game was, I won off Kevin Hayes, and it was just a pain train. But like, he was 2,800. I think you get into the depth of Arizona. They're not a very good defensive team. So
no,
I agree there. So yeah, let's move on to the next one. The Vegas Golden Knights with a 3 total heading into Winnipeg. The Los Jets have a 3 total as well. Gabriel Velarde out 4 to 6 weeks. That actually is bad news for right now, but it's actually good news considering what the injury looked like. I thought he tore his ACL and was going to be out for the season. 4 to 6 weeks, not too bad. The Jets without Velarde are going to be a mess.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, like, they could put Ehlers up there. Will they? No. Mason Appleton starts up there with Scheifele and Connor. Like, Mason Appleton, he played decent up there last year. It's just not what I want to have up there going in the matchup against Vegas. Ehlers, Perfidi, Nemestikov getting heavy ownership because they're 10,400. They just don't play enough. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm on the Vegas top line here. I think they've been good all of last year. Like, the Eichel hate is still unreal. Like, the dude won a Stanley Cup, and Buffalo media is still like slaughtering him. I don't know why. He has been excellent. The numbers back it up. I'm on Vegas 1 here.
Yeah, like you mentioned with the top line, like their expected goals for and against were fine with Appleton there. But as we mentioned on an earlier show, one of the reasons why that top line struggled last year was with Appleton. Like, he's not a goal scorer. He's not a passer. Like, he's not a good offensive player. He's a fine defensive, like, third, fourth liner. He doesn't belong in that top line. It's just they just only have so many options. Like, they could put Ehlers or Perfidi up there, but then, who's playing on their second line, right? I think they're kind of hoping Scheifele and Connor can carry him. Scheifele and Connor are going to play over 20 minutes. And the way Winnipeg runs their lines, the Scheifele and Connor duo will not see that much of Jack Eichel. And the Mark Stone line has had pretty bad defensive numbers to start this season. And Vegas has had a pretty soft schedule to start. So it's not like they're running the gamut of like, Carolina, Colorado, Calgary, something like that. Like they weren't doing that. They had a pretty soft schedule, and that second line has not looked good. And Brett Howden in on the third line, he's definitely going to drag them down defensively. So
legend.
Hey man, he's got a Stanley Cup, so I can't mouth the guy, but he's just not good defensively. Sorry. Well, I don't hate the idea of like a two-man of Connor or Scheifele or something like that. One of the problems is Vegas is another team that doesn't take a lot of penalties. Not that Winnipeg thrives on the power play, but it certainly helps the value of their top guys. I honestly don't hate the idea of playing like a two-man of Connor and Scheifele or something like that. Just because they are going to get second and third line matchups from Vegas. And Vegas's middle six has looked kind of shaky. Other than that, I don't have a lot of interest in the Jet side. I'm kind of with you on the Vegas side. I do like the Vegas top line. I wrote about Jack Eichel at another spot recently, and the big changes for him has been, one, getting back to 20 minutes a night, which is not where he was when he first got to Vegas. And the other is getting a lot more power play ice time. He's like 70 to 75% of the team's power play ice time, which is what he was getting back in Buffalo. When he first got to Vegas, it was like 55 to 60%. Because they were splitting power play units. But with the injuries and with how well the top unit did, he's getting a lot more power play time. He's getting a lot more time overall. Him and Marchessault and Barbashev had looked pretty good together again so far this season. Again, soft schedule, but like I just said, the Stone line hasn't looked good in that soft schedule. The top line has. And Winnipeg's going to be running out their second and third lines against that Vegas line, and they cannot match up with them. I'm with you. I like Vegas won the most in this game.
Yeah, it's just, you're going to be stacking against Hellbuck on a 12-game slate. And if that's what you want to do, go for it. As we mentioned off the top, we are sponsored by Bet365. And if you deposit $10, bet $5, you'll get $150 in bonus bets. The states available: Kentucky, Ohio, New Jersey, Virginia, Iowa, and Colorado. Also, Bet365, you can kind of do points parlays, which kind of correlate for hockey. And I think that's the best site to do parlays on is Bet365 for hockey. You get really good odds there. Also, if you want to tail me on the big dog plus money prop of the night, it is Chris Kreider plus 175 for a power play point. You have to be 21 plus unless you're in Kentucky. No rules apply there, apparently. And if you or anyone else have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Let's move on to the main event of the evening. The Dallas Stars with a 3.6 total heading into Anaheim. Los Patos de Anaheim have a 2.4 total. Dallas won 22,100 on the road, coming in with 2.5% projected ownership against the Ducks. Against the Ducks. I don't know if you heard. Against the Ducks.
And they just announced Jamie Drysdale is not playing tonight.
No Jamie Drysdale, and the Ducks send out Mason McTavish and Ryan Strome and Frank Vetrano out against top comp. Against the Ducks. You know what I mean? Like, Dallas 1 is one of my favorite lines of the night tonight. Also, the Dallas second line has not been great defensively. They're a good offensive line, don't get me wrong. They have not been great defensively. Now, Uncle Leo Carlson, the number 2 pick in the NHL draft, is moving up with Troy Terry and Trevor Zegras. They're 13-6, getting similar ownership here. We're on a 12-game slate with tons of firepower, and I'm talking about playing the Ducks. Help.
Yeah, I mean, it's a twofold thing. One, how's Carlson going to fit in with them? It's his first game, right? And his first game back from injury on top of that. So how is that going to fit? Two, like, missing Drysdale is not a small miss. He is their best defenseman at this point. He's better than Fowler. He's better than Mintyukov. He's better than Gudas or Lacombe or any of those guys. Like, so you take it, yeah. So you take a team that doesn't really have a lot of defensive depth, and you take out probably their one really good defenseman. Like, I have concerns about that. So that's kind of what makes me want to play Dallas more than play Anaheim in this one, right? Robertson, Hintz, Pavelski. I wrote up Pavelski in the picks article. Off to I shouldn't say off to a good start because Hintz has only played one game. I think the big problem with them is whether they get a lot of ice time, right? Because now they have their full lineup. we've seen that. We saw that with Boston last year, right? Like Boston they'd have games where Patrice Bergeron would only play 16 minutes because the second and third lines would score a few goals and then they'd lock things down and then that'd be it, right? So that's kind of the concern with Dallas One here. But I'm with you. Like, it's a tremendous matchup for them. Like, Anaheim was a team that took way too many penalties last year. And this year, they're giving up 6 power plays per game. Now, they've only played 2 games, but 6 power plays per game is a lot to give up in any kind of small sample, especially for a team that was one of the most penalized teams in the league last year. So, it's kind of just a continuation of what they were doing. So I really do like that Dallas top line. Now, you get down to single entry, you're choosing between like Buffalo, Dallas, Colorado, Toronto. Like there's, but I really do like them. I also like the Wyatt Johnston line. They are coming in a little bit over-owned. But like they're a line that could see bottom 6 matchups from the Ducks. And like that doesn't scare me whatsoever. If you want to leave off of getting Dadonov, I think that's fine because Johnson and Ben are kind of Dadonov is good. I think he kind of gets slagged unnecessarily. But I think Ben and Johnson are, especially where Ben's on the top power play unit, and Johnson I think is the guy that really makes that line go. So I honestly don't hate what we have listed as Dallas 3, but it'd probably be more like a 2-man stack rather than a full 3-man. On the Duck side, like I can't get there. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I think I'd rather just go find $1,500 and like go play Arizona instead. Go play Los Angeles 2 instead. Go play your Rangers 2 instead. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there are lines that you can play in that price range that aren't the Anaheim Ducks missing their best defenseman playing, a top 5 team in the league. So, like, I'm not going to say don't play them because I do think there is a chance that Karlsson ends up a pretty good player. Terry and Zegras can usually generate offense with almost anybody. And it's just a tough matchup without their defenseman. With other lines in that price range, I'd rather play.
Yeah. We'll save the Ducks for another time then, I guess. Carolina Hurricanes with a 3.2 total heading into Seattle. The Kraken have a 2.8 total. There is no team that I'm less enthusiastic about than Seattle for DFS purposes. They just suck for DFS. I don't think Aho is going to be playing tonight. Carolina ran out Bunting, Netchus, and Teravainen the other night. They actually look pretty good. Seth Jarvis on the second line with Kotkaniemi and Nason. And then the third line remained the third line. We'll have to wait and see. I didn't see an update on Aho before we went on the air. I don't know if there's been one. But that's probably the only line really in this game that I'm interested in. If you want to go to like Seattle, Tolvanen, Gord, Burakovsky, fine. But like I don't really like stacking against Carolina. I don't like stacking Seattle as it is. So like this is a tough matchup. So it's probably just Carolina 1 for me.
Yeah, I haven't seen an official update on Aho. What I will say is that their next 2 games after this are in Colorado and in Tampa Bay. And Rod Brindamore did say for the early portion of the season, if any player has any sort of small issue, they're just sitting him. They're not taking any chances with injuries at all. So if Aho's not 100%, they're definitely not playing him against Seattle. So, and hope that he's healthy to play against Colorado. So I'm assuming that he's not in tonight. Like, don't get me wrong. Carolina is definitely in play. Doesn't matter what line combination. Teravainen, Netchus, Bunting, like you said, they did look perfectly fine in their first game. Seattle's not, they are getting kind of lit up. But again, it's not necessarily that the team has been terrible defensively. One thing that they're doing is they're playing to a little bit of a higher pace than they were last year. That's something that they played to a pretty low pace last year. And that's why they were almost a dead zone for DFS, is that they wouldn't generate a lot. You would ride percentages and just kind of hope that the 16 minutes that your player got was enough to, get their percentages right. I just don't have a lot of interest in Seattle. Like, if you want to play McCann, Beniers, Eberle, I think that's fine. Like, that line is going to break through because that is a line that is playing well. They're at 74 shot attempts and 3.5 expected goals per 60 minutes in their time together so far this season. It's just they're shooting 3%. Once that turns into like even 8% or 9%, which is still just like right around league average, they are going to start filling the net. So knowing that, I have no problem really playing Seattle 1. But I think it would be more of like a 20 max, 150 max than going to play them in my single entries. On the Carolina side, like, no. Like, I'm just going to say I don't have a lot of interest in playing either side of this game. Like, if you want to, I think I'd be more interested in, honestly, going back to Carolina 3 than I would be in playing anybody out of the top 6.
Fair enough. Chicago Blackhawks with a 2.4 total heading into Colorado. The Avalanche have a 4.1 total. The top line dream for Johnny Drouin has come to an end. Colorado top line of McKinnon, Ranton, Valerie, Nichushkin. They're 22,100, and they are the highest owned projected line on the slate tonight, coming in around 19%, more than double almost any other line on the slate. Nichushkin's still on the second power play. For whatever reason, Colorado is still going with the Ryan Johansson experiment on the top power play. Why? I don't know. Colorado 3 way over owned. They're only 8,600 though. They're getting almost 6%. That seems a bit scenic, but I don't know. If you need some cheap one-off there, I think that's fine. Bedard, Hall, Donato coming in right around their top 2 stack percentage. I think they would be in my MME mix. I doubt I'd get there in one lineup.
Yeah, I highlighted Nathan McKinnon in the picks article. Again, free to read over at Stokastic.com, just because of how much that line has generated. But only 3.3 expected goals and 3.2 actual goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5. Like, don't get me wrong, those are pretty good offensive numbers. But for a top Colorado line, like, you actually want something higher than that. You know, and like we talked about Florida earlier, where that Florida second line is over 4 goals per 60 minutes, and this line's at 3.2. What kind of separates them is that they're probably going to play a ton of minutes. Like, that's kind of the difference, is that, like, you know, there is a threat that, you know, Nathan McKinnon is one of those forwards that can play 25 minutes in a game. I don't think he'll play that tonight, probably closer to 22, but he can get that high. I think this isn't necessarily a place where I'd want to go power play stack either. Chicago hasn't really been taking penalties to start the season so far. They're down with St. Louis right at the bottom of the league. They didn't take a ton of penalties last year. And as I mentioned on the last show, the penalty kill has been like at least about average since the All-Star break last year. Like, they really turned things around over the final third of the season. So I don't really have a ton of interest in power play stacking the Avs. I think it would just be like 5-on-5 stacking. Going to the top line is perfectly acceptable here. Like, let's face it, like, Connor Bedard and his line has looked good this year, but they engage in track meets. They're trading chances back and forth. And if you're going to be trading chances with Nathan McKinnon and Mikko Rantanen and Valerie Nichushkin, you're probably going to end up on the wrong side of that most of the time, right? So, yeah, I do love Colorado 1. It's just a lot of other people are going to love Colorado 1 too. What I will say is, like, it is a big enough slate where you can easily get different, even in the larger contest with 5,000 plus people. So there's no reason not to really play Colorado here tonight, other than you're worried about them coming in at 20% or something like that. And, you know, so be it. I wouldn't play the Colorado second or third lines. This isn't necessarily one of the spots where I would do it, especially where, like, the Colorado third line's coming in at like nearly 6% ownership, which is just crazy for a 12-game slate. You know, if you want a one-off Ross Colton or one-off Thomas Tatar or something like that, I think you can do that. I just don't know about 3-man stacking the Colorado third line. I don't hate going to Chicago here. They have been generating a lot. 75 shot attempts per 60 minutes, 4 goals per 60 minutes. Bedard has 20 shots in 5 games. Like, once he's only shooting 5 or 6%. Once those shots stop hitting the post and start going in, he's going to fill the net too. I think just for ownership concerns, I might kind of like Chicago a little bit better here. But yeah, this is a smash spot for Colorado. It's just, you know, how much of the chalk do you want to eat? And, you know, I think it's also a spot where you can just one-off Nathan McKinnon. I know you and I talk about not necessarily doing that all the time, but he's just shooting the puck so much that, you know, even if Mikko Rantanen gets a goal and an assist here tonight, it doesn't mean that he's going to be optimal or something like that, right? I think one-offing Nathan McKinnon is also acceptable.
Yeah, and again, I'll reiterate, if you're playing single entry and you're concerned about the ownership, but you really like Colorado, play Colorado. There, like Cliffy said, there are so many ways to get different. There are so many lines in the $13,000 to $15,000 range that have no ownership. So like, don't come off the Avs because they're going to be high owned tonight if you love them.
Yeah.
In 150, you make the choice, right? You want to be under. You want to take a stand. You want to be under the field. You want to be way over. Then you do that. But in single entry, if the Avs are your team tonight, play them. Let's move on to the last game of the night. The Boston Bruins with a 3.6 total heading into San Jose. The Sharks have a 2.4 total. Like, Boston won's in a great spot here tonight. I will say, like, Hertl, Duclair, Barabanov, from a defensive standpoint, might be an okay line. Like, of all the combinations you can throw together for the Sharks, this one might be their best defensive line. That being said, you're still going up against David Pastrnak, and if you're league average, he'll take advantage of that. Like, I like Zacha. He shouldn't be a number one center in this league, but I like the line of Pastrnak to Bruss. Zacha, they're coming in at 8.5%, which feels fine. Like, the Sharks might be the worst defensive team in the past, 20 years. So I think, a nice late hammer Boston makes some sense. On the Sharks side, if you want to play them in MME, be my guest, but I have no interest in the Sharks tonight.
Yeah, I have no interest in San Jose either. For Boston, I think I do like the top line here, especially where they're coming in with positive leverage, right? Like, they have a 13% top two stack, only 8.5% ownership. At least that's on DraftKings. Over on FanDuel, they're coming a little bit higher, but basically right on their top two stack percentage. One thing that worries me is that Jake DeBrusk and David Pastrnak typically haven't played well together. We're looking at small samples, and a lot of that was with David Krejci or Patrice Bergeron. So how it looks with Pavel Zacha kind of remains to be seen. But they're coming in with positive leverage. You get 2 out of the 3 guys on the top power play unit. San Jose, like, one thing we talked about on their I think it was their first game, was that it was a team that didn't take a ton of penalties last year and actually didn't have a bad penalty kill either. That's completely reversed itself this year. They do have a very bad penalty kill this year, and they're top 10 by time shorthanded per game. Again, only 3 games, but they're taking a lot of penalties. So I think Boston 1 is one of those lines that I like tonight. Like, if you don't want to go play 20% Colorado, or you want to stay away from double-digit ownership Toronto, if you want something a little bit cheaper, I think it's the Boston top line. Now, if you want to leave off DeBrusk and put on James Van Riemsdyk, I think that's perfectly fine, because DeBrusk is probably he's not on the top power play unit, and you can save over $1,000 from Jake DeBrusk. So you can actually stack like JVR, Pastrnak, Zacha for like a little over 18K, and that leaves you enough for another good stack to go with them. So I like the Boston top line here. I have no concerns about anything from the San Jose side.
Yep. There are about 200 of you in here. Please smash that like button. It helps us out so much. It helps us bring you free content like this almost every day. Coming up after us, we have the Owner Box Strategy Show at 4:30 with Greg Ehrenberg. Then we have NFL Showdown live before lock at 7:15 with Lofty and Neil. So if you are playing on Owner's Box, which is a fun site, and if you are playing NFL Showdown, check those shows out. Let's talk a little bit about defensemen. I think with all these expensive lines on the slate tonight, paying up on the blue line could be a nice way to get different. There aren't like great high-end options. You have Makar and Yossi, obviously. But then after that, like, I don't really have too much interest in playing 7,200 Burns. I think, you look at Evan Bouchard at 6,200. I think spending up in that area is a nice way to get different. What are you thinking for defensemen?
Yeah, I have Makar like easily at the top of the list. Like, let's get serious here. But Shea Theodore, obviously, I'm still waiting to see anything on Alex Pietrangelo. Vegas, I didn't see anything from their beat writers today. I assume he's still out tonight. Shea Theodore, I think, played 27 minutes in that last game. Now, they said Alec Martinez, is going to be back. So maybe that eats into Theodore's ice time a little bit. But Theodore's probably still going to be, 23, 24 minutes. And if he's playing that, I'll play him at 6K. So don't mind him. It's Quinn Hughes that really caught my eye. wrote him up in the picks article. He's been shooting the puck to start this season. And, he said last year he wanted to shoot the puck more. He didn't. Maybe he was just a year early on his predictions. So I don't mind Quinn Hughes. Travis Sanheim certainly running the power play for the Flyers. Justin Falk for St. Louis in that mid-price range. Like, he's still putting up, shots and blocks. And on DraftKings, that's exactly what you want. He's under 5K. So don't mind him. If you're looking for super cheap guys, Adam Larson from Seattle at 3,900 is one of my favorite options under 4K on DraftKings here tonight. I wrote up Brock Faber. He's still going to have to play a bunch of minutes for Minnesota because of their defensive injuries. Alex Carrier for Nashville, I think, is fine. Thomas Harley in Dallas got up over 20 minutes in their last game, and he's still playing well. If you need a sub 3K defenseman, I think Harley or Jordan Spence would be the guys for me.
Yeah, I'll just add on Sam Girard. He's been playing 20 minutes a night. He's 3,500. You don't have to put him in with the Colorado stack. Like, you don't need to force that correlation. But if you're into your last spot around there, I think he's fine. Let's move on to goalies here. Always fun with goalies. We have the low end, Peter Mrazek, 6,900 against Colorado. You want to strap in for a long. I will say, Colorado just shoots the puck a ton and has a little bit of trouble scoring the past game. If you want to lock in some Peter Mrazek, if you feel like Brad Pitt in Ocean's 11, only suicidal in the mornings. Capo Kakinen, no interest there. John Gibson could be a scene. Like, who are the cheap options you're looking at?
I mean, UC Saros stuck out immediately, right? 7,200 playing against your Rangers. Yeah, certainly John Gibson at 7,100. I'll always play him. I actually don't mind Devin Levi here tonight at home against Calgary. He's a little bit more expensive. But Calgary is a team that usually generates a lot of shots but has trouble scoring. So I do like Devin Levi here tonight as well. So Levi, Gibson, Saros are kind of the three goalies that I was looking towards the most. Nobody else really stuck out to me, at least as far as tournaments go.
Yeah, I don't mind Connor Ingram against the Blues. I also don't mind Logan Thompson against the Jets tonight. I mean, like, listen, if you have a lean for your goalie, just play him. You might, like, goalies, just you spin the wheel, whatever it lands on, just plug them in. But if you have a lean, like, they're just mythical creatures like unicorns. I don't understand them.
If you're playing on DraftKings, it's look for volume. I mean, that's why we always suggest like those $7,000 goalies that are on the road, like in Vegas, in Carolina, things like that. It's because you want the guys that might end up giving you that 35 save bonus.
Yep. Who are you liking for your hat trick pick?
Gonna go. I don't know if it's chalky, but somebody that's going to be popular, I think. But I think he breaks through finally here tonight, and I'm going with Braden Point.
Okay. I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm gonna go Kevin Fiala.
All right. I like it. I mean, let's hope our Kings can do it again. They need to start racking up some points here.
Yes, they do. And we do not have a show tomorrow. It's a short slate. We will be back on Saturday at 2. And then next Tuesday, every team in the NHL is playing. So could be a pretty long show there. But I'm actually looking forward to see how the NHL screws up their red zone product or whatever it's called. But big slate. Make sure to hop in that Discord if you can. We'll be there. And good luck, everybody. Hopefully we're talking about you Saturday in the afternoon.
Yeah, good luck tonight, everyone.